Over the past 4 months, I've been playing some of the best combat games, studying toxin breakdowns, and formulating a plan, all in search to answer one question: what makes combat great? Combat is a huge genre, so picking the right style is crucial. Do you want something super flashy like Devil May Cry, where you can juggle enemies with insane combos? Or maybe you want something a little more weighty and intentional, like Dark Souls? Maybe you want to freely flow from enemy to enemy, taking each one down in style, or to sneak around in the shadows to deliver a stealthy assassination. For whatever style you're going for, it's important to know your combat's identity. For my game's combat system, I take heavy inspiration from God of War. Its blend of impactful yet fluid combat was a huge influence, but I'd be lying if I said that was the only inspiration, as games like Elden Ring and Ghost of Tsushima completely gripped me, and elements of their design have also shaped my development approach. Since combat is at the core of my game, I knew I needed a system that was not only fun and responsive, but scalable and highly customizable. So when designing this system, I wanted to easily be able to add new weapons with a wide variety of heavy and light attacks. Currently, these attacks include combos, the bread and butter of combat, allowing players to chain attacks together for smooth and satisfying sequences. Both heavy and light variants have unique combo strings, typically ranging from 2 to 4 attacks. Secondly, we have charge attacks, which are powerful strikes that require holding the attack button for a brief moment before delivering a devastating blow. Mastering the timing here is key, as the commitment leaves the player vulnerable to damage before the attack is unleashed. Next up, we have sprint attacks, and these take advantage of the movement's momentum, perfect for aggressive playstyles and closing the gap on enemies. Following that, we have aerial attacks, and these are executed in the air, letting you rain down powerful blows on enemies below. Aim attacks are projectile-based strikes, ideal for ranged or thrown weapons like bows and spears. And recovery attacks are quick strikes that help players regain control after committing to a heavy attack. And finally, finisher attacks are devastating cinematic moves that execute weakened enemies in a stylish and brutal fashion. This variety allows players to approach combat in different ways, whether they prefer calculated, methodical strikes or fast, relentless aggression. Each of these attacks have their own data, where I expose variables like damage multiplier, which multiplies the base weapon damage and inflicts it on the enemy when a collision occurs. We also have stamina cost, which is the energy needed to perform the action, and specific attacks may have fields like a charging time for charge attacks. Each attack has transition data, which allows you to specify the next sequenced attack. For combos, you can specify the combo transition, allowing you to seamlessly go from light to heavy combos or vice versa. Non-combo attacks can also be transitioned into combos or recoveries if they are high-effort attacks. Weapon animations are held in the animator overrider, which gets overlaid onto the base animation graph. In this editor, I have taken each attack's override field and displayed them in the data, allowing me to easily change the override animation or the target override state. The animation also has 2 events on it, declaring when to activate and deactivate the weapon colliders. This means that damage only gets inflicted when intended. But good combat is not just about damage or animations, it's about how it feels. Impact, feedback, and presentation play a huge role in making every hit satisfying. To start with, we can add a trill on the weapon, as this helps emphasize the speed and motion of the attack. Then comes the impact, where sparks fly from the weapon and the enemy jolts back. A hit flash highlights the damage being taken, while the model shakes to sell the force of the blow. And to really drive it home, if the impact is big enough, the enemy will shoot out blood and bones, making every hit feel beefy and raw. We can also apply some screen space effects, such as chromatic aberration and lens distortion, along with some camera shake and zoom to amplify the impact of the attack. Additionally, we can add some extra things, like a hit stop, which freezes the game for a brief period of time, adding more weight to the attack. One of the best ways to add literal feeling to the combat is haptic feedback, which is where the controller shakes. Finally, to make the combat feel better, I implemented motion warping and orientation assist, which basically drags the player closer to the enemy by emphasizing the animation depending on how far away it is from the enemy. This helps reduce frustration when they execute an attack that looks like it should hit, but they're just slightly too far away. Now we have covered VFX and feel, let's talk about the other effect, sound effects. These are often overlooked in early development, but they add so much to the immersiveness of combat. When attacking, there are multiple sounds that may need to be played. For instance, the effort sound, made by the player at the start of the attack, the weapon swing and impact sound, and the enemy's impact and damage sound, as well as some others. Good sound design is crucial to any game, so in the attack data, I also allow specific sounds to be chosen for the weapon, otherwise they are automatically picked based on the attack's stamina usage, velocity, and impact speed. Another combat mechanic that adds more strategy is the stamina system. Every attack costs stamina, and managing it is key to maintaining an effective offense and defense. For example, performing heavy attacks or dodging consumes more stamina. The player must be mindful of when to go all in with a powerful combo, or when to back off and conserve stamina for defense. So in this game, I do want it to be a bit more forgiving than say Dark Souls style, to allow the player to feel more like a powerful Viking. In combat, locking onto an enemy is essential for precision and control. The lock-on system allows the player to focus on a single enemy, making targeting and dodging more intuitive. Once locked on, the player can move around the enemy, reposition for attacks, and ensure they land the strike, no matter where the enemy moves. I also allowed the player to switch between lock-on targets by pushing the analog stick or by swiping the mouse quickly left or right. But combat isn't all about attacking. Defense is a huge part, and having different options to fend off an enemy is crucial. Firstly, we have the simple block, which protects you from the enemy's attack. Then we have a dodge, which allows you to dive out of the way of an oncoming barrage at the cost of some stamina. Finally, we have a way to counterattack with the parry. Clicking the block button right before the enemy hits you will stun the enemy and allow you to perform a free instant charge attack. I'm also planning to implement other defensive mechanics like a shield break system for when you try blocking for too long or blocking an attack that is too strong, and also adding iframes to the dodges like in Elden Ring. One of the biggest factors in combat feedback is seeing how your attacks affect the enemy. To enhance this, I've implemented multiple enemy hit states that visually and mechanically reflect the damage dealt. These include minor. This means the enemy takes damage but shows no reaction. Stagger breaks the enemy out of their current action. Stun will break the enemy out of their current action and play an animation, leaving them vulnerable for longer. Knockback occurs on huge attacks and sends the enemy flying across the arena to further showcase your power. Knockdowns happen when attacks target the legs and can swipe the enemy off their feet, immobilizing them. The juggle state is entered when attacks with an upward force pop up the enemy, allowing you to juggle it in the air. And the finisher hit state allows the player to start a finisher attack by displaying the time and the keys above the enemy while leaving them stunned. The hit state an enemy enters is determined by their stance strength. Bigger enemies are much harder to stagger or stun, making them feel more formidable in battle, while smaller enemies can be flung around the place, making for more dynamic combat interactions. Finally, a feature that every Viking game needs, the Berserker Mode. After charging up the Allfather's Blessing by getting 5 uninterrupted combos 3 times, you can activate that Viking rage deep within, transitioning you into a lethal monster. In this state, your damage and stance breaking power is greatly increased, as well as your speed and motion warping. With unlimited stamina, you'll be able to charge at enemies like a crazed Viking, tearing through everything in your path. While I've covered a lot of ground in terms of combat mechanics, there's one crucial element I haven't touched on yet. And that wraps up the first episode of a new series I'm starting called What Makes Feature Great, where I try break down and dive deep into some of the systems that I think make that element so epic. And today we cover the combat system, but in the next video we're going to be talking about enemy AI. And I'm really excited for that one, as we're going to be diving into some awesome stuff like goal-oriented action planning, more state machines, and how to position and coordinate multiple enemies in an attack based on their aggression scores. Even though we've made a lot of progress with combat, I still think it's probably only like 50% done, as I really want to push to make it as dynamic and fluid as possible, and I'm sure with the addition of multiplayer later, that is going to be a complete game changer. But before I go, I just want to thank you all for watching and supporting this journey. It really means the world to me, and I really hope you're as hyped as I am for the stuff to come. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, as you'll be notified for the next one, where we'll dive into some of the magic behind enemy AI. But until then, it's bye for now.